Welcome in, guys, to Fat's ROR guide on DPS Disciple of Cain. Today's going to be a bit longer video. I want to go into a more in-depth look into the class spec for you guys. We'll be taking a look at talent builds, renown builds, gearing, as well as some add-on rotations and some PvP tips and tricks for you guys. Alright, first of all, I want to start off with our talent builds. We'll take a look at both endgame builds and kind of how you want to progress your talents as you're leveling up through the ranks. First, we've got Path of Torture. Starting from the bottom, working our way up, we have Murderous Intent. This is going to be a staple into our spec. There's really no version of this where we're not going to run it. It's 10% increased crit, 10% increased parry. Just a straight boost to our offense and defense passively. Next, we have Saying Extension. This is more of a filler now that our heal debuff tactic has changed. Curse of Cain, now it's tied to our Lacerate ability, which is a core skill, which is a nice improvement in the recent heal patch, and it also buffs our Saying Extension damage. We also have Racking Agony, but we're going to come back to that in a second because this is more of a situational skill now. At 13 points, we have Serrated Blade. This is a hard-hitting ability that also has a massive armor debuff on it. And most of our rotation is physical, so this armor debuff is absolutely huge. Really nice addition that we got in the recent patch to our DPS kit. Now, going back to Racking Agony, this is our execute, and when it's used in combo with Drowning in Blood, it does have a guaranteed crit, and it is our single hardest hitting ability. However, due to the resource requirement and mechanics of the new Drowning in Blood and Racking Agony, I call it a situational skill because if we get too happy with this ability and too happy with this Drowning in Blood buff, then we lose our ability to function with most of our utility and our healing kit, which generally just feels really bad. So I only use this skill situationally. Next, we have Path of Sacrifice. First and foremost, we want Devour Essence. This is a huge ability. We can use this both offensively and defensively. There is a little bit of situational awareness when you're using this skill that we will go over in the rotational segment. But really strong skill, worth picking up as soon as you can. And then we finish off with Pillage Essence. Pillage Essence has been nerfed quite a bit in the recent patch. This used to give us a huge amount of Soul Essence regeneration. Unfortunately, now it only does that if we use this as an interrupt, and we interrupt an ability, which isn't the easiest thing to do or even possible on all targets. So this is really mostly just a filler DD. It still hits really hard, still worth picking up, just not as high of a priority. So when you're leveling up, the highest priority skills we have are our Tactics, Murderous Intent, and Curse of Cain, and then Serrated Blade for the armor debuff, and Devour Essence. Those are the key abilities. Racking Agony, Saying Extension, and Pillage Essence are all abilities that you can pick up that are nice, but grab those along the way. Make sure you get the core abilities first. Next, we will take a look at our Renown builds. And again, the one you guys are going to see first is my rank 80 spec. If you're obviously lower realm rank, we'll take a look at what that could look like for you guys as well. Starting out, we have Futile Strikes. I like to go all the way to Futile Strikes 4. This gives us a huge amount of reduced chance to be crit. Fun note, you can go negative on this stat, and it's beneficial to you. So if you have minus 10% chance to be crit, and your enemy has 20% chance to crit, then their chance to crit you is only going to be 10%. So negative chance to be crit, super important. I stack just about as much of it as I can. Next, I take max parry or reflexes. Parry is really our only defense, so every chance you can stack parry, always a great idea. And then I just put my remaining points in some passive strength, passive weapon skill, and 1 point in wounds. Strength and weapon skill, both important stats for us. Offensively, a lot of our damage is physical, so weapon skill does help, and then everything we do scales well with strength, so naturally. If you wanted to go with a more glass cannon build, you could lower Futile Strikes to Futile Strikes 2 or 3, pick up some crit strike or even some higher weapon skill or strength. If you're lower Renown rank, skip the strength, skip the weapon skill, focus on futile strikes and parry first. You may have to reduce futile strikes to 3 earlier on in order to get all your parry maxed out and your passes where you need them. Alright guys, now we're going to take a quick look at our tactics. Again, I'm going to show you the 4 that I run generally, and then where you could potentially make some swaps and try some different combinations. So first off, we've got Divine Fury, pretty self-explanatory. It's a staple. If you're DPS, it's always going to be slotted. It's 25% more damage. Can't go anywhere without it. I actually want to come back to that one. So next we have Murderous Intent, which is 10% crit, 10% parry. We went over this in the talents. It's a staple. Don't go anywhere without it. Curse of Cain, again, was in our talent build as well. This is our heal debuff. It also buffs our Sang extension damage. I have it slotted 100% of the time that I'm playing, even when I'm solo and duo, because you can run into classes like DPS AM, which are quite common, or the occasional DPS Rune Freeze, and being able to reduce their off heals in that fight is huge. And I run into a lot of enemy healers, whether it's other small mans that have a healer with them, one that's just driving by and starts healing the people I'm fighting, or the occasional healer that's just running a box. It's nice to have the heal debuff to make sure that you can get those kills, and we still pick up the extra damage. Alright, our last tactic slot is the one that we could have potentially some options here. I would say probably 9 out of 10 times that I play, I am running field actions. We'll go way more into detail with this tactic when we get to our rotation and abilities. But basically, as it reads, whenever you are hit, you have a 25% chance to gain 35 soul essence on a 3-second internal cooldown. DPS docs get trained a lot. We are a heal class in the front line. People are going to see us. People are going to hit us. This gives us a lot of resource generation in most of our fights. And it's important to note that if your abilities are defended, so if you are parried or you are blocked, you do not generate the soul essence from that ability unless it lands. So if you're fighting someone with high defenses, you're not generating resources, which means you can't heal, you can't cleanse, you can't execute, etc. As long as you have field actions, though, you have a fairly reliable source of generating resources outside of actually hitting targets. So this is the one that I run the most. It basically guarantees that when I need to heal or do something, I have the resources available to do it. If you do not like this tactic, or you don't feel you need it as much as I do, you can look at King's Blessing. This is a very strong DPS tactic. Auto attacks make up, they're in like the top 3 of our damage sources on most targets. So 50% attack speed on your auto attacks, that's 50% increased auto attack damage, that's huge, right? Not flat damage, right, but in swing speed. This will put out a lot of extra DPS for you. If I switch out of field actions for group play, this is generally the tactic that I'm slotting in its place. Some other tactic options, and I'm going to refer to this as more of an AoE or Zerg or Warband build, and that would be Kane's Imbuement. This is a recently reworked tactic with the healer patch, where every time we crit enemies with a direct damage, which includes our AoE, by the way, not only does it proc a small dot, but I would say maybe more importantly is it gives us a 5% crit buff. And then you combo that with Essence Shatter, which is a new tactic, and it removes the cooldown on our AoE. In Warbands, where you're spamming your AoE damage, you're defending or attacking keeps, you're doing Fortress, you're doing City, or you're just an AoE-centric 6-man even trying to do scenarios. If you want an AoE build, using Essence Shatter is huge, because then you have a spammable AoE. Combo it with Kane's Imbuement, probably go a little bit more Glass Cannon, a little more crit based, and yeah, you can put out some pretty decent numbers. Combo it with Devour Essence for a little bit extra AoE damage, super strong AoE damage for our class, at least the best that we've seen so far. A couple other ones that could be interesting to note here is Potent Covenants. I believe the proc meta is mostly dead these days, but occasionally if you're in a group that's building toward a proc-based group, Potent Covenants can be a pretty nice tactic to swap to. Morales, I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on because they're pretty straightforward. They don't really change much game style to game style, but you got Divine Favor, which is our M1, which is an instant single target heal. M2 is an AoE DD that also heals. Super big heal in AoE situations. This can basically reset a fight. Morale 3 is our big melee absorb bubble, occasionally useful as well. And then M4, honestly, is just this is mostly used in like fortress fights, maybe some keep fights where you can get some instant AoE res out. Alright guys, next I want to take a look at our gear. I'll show you guys what I'm running and then give you guys some suggestions on maybe how to gear up a new DoK, right? So starting out, I'm not 100% BIS. I am still trying to get the Warcrest together for my ring to ring. So this will change slightly in the future, but this is a near BIS gear comp that you guys can take a look at here. I am currently running 3-piece Sovereign with 5-piece Warlord. Eventually this will change to 4-piece Triumphant with 5-piece Warlord. Right now I am running the Sentinel ring for the Talisman slot. Eventually this will become the Ringed ring, and then we'll swap the sets. Until then, we've got Helm, Belt, and Boots as Sovereign, and then that leaves us Shoulders, Back, Chest, Gloves, and Ring as Warlord. In our Sentinel slot, I like to slot the 6% parry Talisman. Again, if you're going for a more Warband or AoE centric or Glass Cannon build, you might want to run the 4% melee crit here instead. And then I run 2-piece Warrior Genesis jewels with the Strength parry. I feel like this is kind of a staple. Most DPS docs are probably running this. Anytime you can slot parry, it's usually a good idea. And then I run the Initiative melee power. There is a Strength Runes version of this that some people like to run. Honestly, either one is perfectly fine. It just comes down to player preference, in my opinion. This is basically, melee power basically translates to Strength. So this is Initiative Strength versus Initiative Wounds. There is no wrong answer, whichever one you guys want to run. If you are gearing up, be wary of what weapons you pick. I like to run the Fortress and the Scenario weapons, but these are upgraded. So this would be the Subjugator weapon to start with, and this would be a Renown 45 version of this weapon that you need to buy first in order to upgrade into these ones. So if you're looking for weapon options to run early on, Subjugators are a strong choice. I'd probably run double Subjugators, or maybe throw a Madcap on there if you're still in the early gear progression. And then a PvE build to get you started. I like to run as Bloodlord and Sentinel. Unfortunately, I can't show you guys the exact Sentinel and the exact Bloodlord pieces, because somewhere over the years I have somehow managed to misplace some of mine, and they're not in my bank. But I will equip the total sets so that we can take an overall look at them for you guys anyways. And it would look something like this, where you're going to be in 5-piece Bloodlord and 3-piece Sentinel, because the ring does count toward the set bonus. 3-piece Sentinel gives us a Strength and Initiative set bonus. If I remember correctly, early on, DoKs are a little bit Initiative starved, and that, again, going back into anti-crit, I'm a huge fan of that stat, so having extra Initiative is kind of a no-brainer. 5-piece Bloodlord gives us all of our defensive stats, or all of our offensive stats: weapon skill, strength, crit proc. Great set to start with. All of this can come from PvE, no realm rank requirement. Great way to start. Now, if you want to go maybe a more Warband friendly build, or you're looking to go more Glass Cannon for a group, you could look at running 6-piece Bloodlord and 2-piece Sentinel, and then you would pick up a proc that buffs your weapon skill by 110. I'm not sure if the toughness debuff will stack with our Lacerate, but in an AoE situation, having that debuff proc would actually be quite nice. Otherwise, I would probably stick to the 5-3 split. Alright guys, real quick before we take a look at add-ons, before we take a look at rotation, I'd like to go over a couple add-ons with you. The first one being enemy. Enemy is kind of crucial, I say, for 3 reasons. One is it gives you a party or raid frames that I like a bit better than the base UI. It lets you pick where you put them, and I just like the layout of them. They have nice indicators when you need to cleanse people, stuff like that. Next is it offers a set of easy to use assist macros and assist tools, just making it really easy to stay with your main assist. And then the third one is markers. So on top of my minimap here, I have these colored boxes. This is part of enemy. And if I mark a target, it looks like that. So I like to use these markers on my group. That way when we're out and about, I can kind of keep tabs on where everyone is in the masses of people. Just makes coordinating a little bit easier. Next add-on is an add-on called Bind Buddy. What this does is it lets you set a specific keybind to target a specific player. So you can target a player, and you'll see it sets the target to them. I can set a keybind, so every time I hit the keybind, it would automatically target them. This is really nice if you're having trouble Ren soloing on people in your party. You can set, if you're dueling with a tank, I would suggest you set your Bind Buddy to your tank friend, and then if you need to Ren Soul them, you click your Bind Buddy and it would automatically target them. And what you want to combo that with is going to key mapping, the targeting, and target self. I would suggest you keybind that as well. And then that way, when you need to Ren Soul yourself, you can just hit that keybind and you'll start healing yourself. With these tools, I can generally heal 2, if not 3 people during a single Ren Soul when I really need it. Super helpful, and it really helps bring the DPS spec to life because you're doing a lot more than just DPS. The third add-on I want to go over is one that gets a little bit of backlash. People think it's Nerf buttons, but it's not. It does do something very basic and similar, and the add-on is called Sequencer. This allows you to put multiple abilities or rotation into a single button. It is very limited compared to Nerf buttons, and it's really only designed to help with button bloat, which if you're playing DPS DoK effectively, there is a lot of button bloat. This sequence here is my primary rotation or DPS rotation, and you will see that it is 8 abilities long. There's a lot of stuff on my hotbar already. I don't need an 8-button rotation to go with my other 20 keybinds for utility purposes. If you want to run these all on separate keybinds and you prefer to play that way, there's nothing wrong with that. But if you're struggling a little bit to figure out what your rotation is or get your rotation done correctly and juggle all the heal and utility aspects of the class, this is a great way to simplify your rotation and allow you to put focus into other aspects of the game. And I'm going to use this sequence here to go over my rotation for you guys, whether you want to do it in sequence or keybinds. So when I start in on a fresh target, my first ability that I use is Consume Strength. Really, this is going to come down to player preference, but you want to use either Consume Strength or Serrated Blade as your first ability. This one gives me a strength buff, which is the main thing I'm looking for because I do not run strength bots. Which means that every ability I do from here on out is going to hit slightly harder and have very slightly higher strike through bonus. Next, I use Serrated Blade. That is our armor debuff. This ability also hits very hard, but it's the armor debuff we're looking for because we're about to do a bunch of physical damage. Get this up ASAP, first or second global into your rotation. Next, we have Lacerate. This is kind of a multi-purpose ability. It does a toughness debuff, which is very nice for us. It does do damage, it procs a dot, and it's our heal debuff. So really big ability here. Next we have Flay. This ability hits extremely hard, and if a target is cursed, it'll double the duration of the snare. So what is our curses? Well, all 3 of our opening rotation buttons are curses. The strength debuff, the armor debuff, and the toughness debuff all count as curses. The odds that one of these 3 are getting off before you get the flay are very high, so you should get the extra snare from it. Next we have Warding Strike. This is another hard-hitting DD, and it reduces parry on your target by 10%. This is useful versus all targets. I don't care if it's a healer, a Bright Wizzy, or what it is. You can be parried by literally anything. Every time I see a Bright Wizzy parry me, I go insane. So this is a very strong ability, especially into melee DPS, something like a Witch Hunter, Slayer, White Lion, Tank, etc. Next we have Pillage Essence. As we went over in the talent tree, this is basically just a filler DD at this point. You can try to bind this separately and use it as an interrupt ability, but again, I like it because it hits harder than most of our abilities, so I just throw it right in the rotation. If I happen to get an interrupt with it, great. Otherwise, it's doing damage. It's doing its job. And then we have Saying Extension. This one, again, is more of a filler DD at this point. It no longer is our heal debuff, so I throw it at the end. If I happen to be behind them for the snare, great. If not, it's still worth using because when it's coupled with Curse of Cain, it's actually going to do damage twice, and that's a lot of extra damage. The drowning in blood aspect to this ability is not really worth trying to micromanage. It's a very small amount of damage with a extremely inflated resource cost. Don't even worry about it, in my opinion. And then last we have Cleave Soul. This is our anytime spammable, whatever you want to call it. This is how you always want to end your sequence strings anyways. And it's our straight DD. If we're behind a target, it does deal additional damage, which is nice. But again, most of my fights are small scale, whether it's I'm solo, duo, etc. So even though I do try to get behind my enemies, there's a lot of dancing involved, so it's not really worth me fishing for those back shots 100% of the time. And honestly, our rotation is so huge that I will get anywhere from 1 or 2 Cleave Souls, and then my sequence usually resets anyways. So if you want to keep buying this separately again and fish for those back styles, it's great damage, but for me there's other things to focus on. Alright, now to look at a more complete rotation. So we also have Fell Sacrifice here, which is an AoE dot with a Soul Essence cost. I try to open and maintain this in most of my fights, whether it's 1v1, AoE, or whatever. If this was my target, I would try to use it ahead of time, try to get behind them so it doesn't get defended, and then try to refresh it as needed roughly every 10 seconds. After I get my Fell Sacrifice up, I will follow up with a Devour Essence, just because when you couple these two together, it's just a lot of free damage that you don't need to manage. It's just throwing out to anyone near you. And then from there, you would just go into what I call my 2-2-2 rotation. You just go into your standard rotation and start doing damage. A couple other abilities here for you guys, stuff that you're probably already aware of, but we'll just cover it anyways. We have Consume Enchantment. This is basically like a Sever Blessing. This is how you purge buffs off of enemies. Heal over time, a lot of class buffs. You can actually shatter them off, so if this button lights up, just use it. It's really just that simple. Alright, a couple abilities I have on my bar, even though they're in sequence, and why is that? So the two that you will see here are Lacerate and Flay. Lacerate is pretty self-explanatory. Sometimes you just need that heal debuff and you need it now. Especially in group play, when you're the heal debuffer, your group's calling for it. You don't want, I don't want to wait until the 3rd global cooldown in my sequencer before I heal debuff someone for my group. So having this on its own cooldown or on its own button can be really beneficial. So I like to kind of keep track of it both in the rotation, so it's just going off, and in case I need it, sooner than the 10-second reset. Next we have Flay. This is our snare. It's not a great snare, but it's really the only one we got, minus our Covenant. And sometimes, again, I don't want to wait until the 4th global cooldown to get my snare off. Maybe it's something I need to do right now. So I just have it on a separate bind, and we can just, pop it on the target as needed. Rotationally speaking, how do we use Drowning in Blood and how do we use Racking Agony? So Drowning in Blood's got two applications. There's two playstyles in Warhammer. There's small scale, which is everything from duo or solo, duo, trio to 6-man, and then there's large scale RBR, the warband, the Zerg, the fortress, keep, sieges, etc. Drowning in Blood, if you are in small scale, is basically only useful if you're going for your execute, which is racking agony to kill a target. I have these sequenced together because Drowning in Blood, even though it is off the global cooldown, felt really clunky for me to have on its own keybind and then hit another keybind to get the execute effect to go off. And a lot of the times you're looking to get that execute off really fast because the target's at 50%, but there's probably a healer somewhere around, which means sometime within the next half a second to a second, they're probably going to catch a heal. And you want to get this ability off before that happens so that you can keep them in that low HP threshold. So I have these two buttons sequenced together so I can just mash them and try to get that execute off really fast. The reason why I say this ability is situational is because in small scale, this ability costs essentially 140 soul essence. You have to activate Drowning in Blood, which costs 20 soul essence, or costs a total of 100 soul essence, 20 soul essence a second. You cannot regenerate any resources during this time. And then Racking Agony costs an additional 40 to trigger itself. So essentially you need 140 soul essence to get one execute. This is not always a pliable plan when you are solo or duoed or small man, because you're having to use Rent, Soul, Devour Essence, Cleanse, your heal over time, Root Break. You're having to do all these other things which all have their own resource costs, and you just do not have that much soul essence. Or you have barely enough, and then a second later you need to heal and you can't, and then you die. So this is a situational, kind of like a fight ender, fight closer. Or your group's not taking any heavy damage and you're able to just plow through enemies, then yeah, use this at will, right? However, if you are in an AoE build, if you're running the AoE tactic and you're in a warband and you've got healers and you've got guard, you're probably going to want to manage Drowning in Blood on its own for the extra 25% crit damage. The problem is the 25% crit damage isn't actually enough to do anything interesting in small scale, so it's not worth the resource investment. If you're just running around spamming AoE with the Zerg, or you're holding a door or pushing a door, using this basically on cooldown and then regenerating your resources and activating again is probably very beneficial for you. If you're just hanging around spamming your AoE, try to keep your AoE dot up, spam Essence Slash, Devour Essence on cooldown, Drowning Blood as often as possible. Alright, now I'm going to take a quick look at some of my PvP tips and tricks for you guys. There's some classes that you just seem to run into more often than not. Those would be things like Shadow Warriors, DPS AMs, White Lions, Witch Hunters. They're all very popular classes out there in the roaming game. How do we handle those? First off, I want to cover Devour Essence and how to effectively use this both when you're by yourself or if you're with a friend or two. The first way to use it, as I described earlier, is to just open with it and use it as a type of burst so you can get extra damage out. This is great if it's a squishy, especially if it's a healer or a caster and you get the drop on them. You get Sacrifice off, you get Aura up. Your next button press for me would be Consume Thought, which is a 4-second silence. And then you go straight into your rotation. And the hope is, when they come out of that 4 seconds, you've already got them inside of your execute range. Because that means for 4 seconds, they cannot detaunt you, they cannot heal themselves, they cannot CC you. And if you can get them to that 50% threshold when that comes off and get your execute off, right as they're about to do all that stuff, you have them in a very bad spot, and they're having to play catch up, and that'll probably get you the kill. I use this opening combination a lot on healers, a lot on AMs, a lot on Bright Wizzies, and a lot of the times it'll actually get me the kill on them because they can't recover from it. This does share an immunity with stuns or knockdowns and staggers. So just be careful if you're around your tanks that you're not messing up their CC. Next is going to be our detaunt. Our detaunt has changed a bit with the recent patch. It used to do all of this, but better, and in one button. Now it's 2 buttons, one for AoE, one for single target, and it's a little clunky. The big one here is going to be our AoE detaunt. If we dot something up with our AoE dot, we can then AoE detaunt, and our dot will not break it unless we reapply it, I believe is how that mechanic works. However, if I AoE detaunt this group of tanks, and then I put Devour Essence up, as soon as that aura hits these people, my detaunt breaks. So what's that mean for us in a fight? That means if we get popped by a couple of Witch Hunters, it's probably more beneficial to AoE detaunt them and try to rend soul off of 1. And then when our AoE detaunt is down, we switch to Devour Essence so that we're cleave AoE healing, but we're not breaking our detaunt. And you can use this strategy pretty similar when you're fighting, say, White Lions. Try to detaunt the White Lion player until you're knocked down. When you come up, you would rend soul the pet, and then you would go back to AoE detaunting so that the pet is detaunted while you're on the player. Ways like that, right? You want to juggle your detaunts so that you have a detaunt up, but you're not breaking it with Devour Essence. That is why I say that there is a little bit of situational awareness with this, because sometimes you need to AoE detaunt, and that's more important than the healing from Devour Essence. Alright guys, that is what I have for you today. I hope that covers most of the information from the recent changes in terms of DPSing. Gives you guys a little bit of a look at how I play my DoK. If I missed anything or you guys have any questions, please go ahead and blow up the comments down below. I will get back to you as soon as I can. Or feel free to pop in during some of my streams or join Discord and just hit me up. I'm always happy to help you guys where I can or point you in the right direction if I can. If there's any other content you feel would be helpful for you, let me know. I'm always happy to get that out for you as well. Alright guys, war never ends, and we'll catch you on the next one.
You're gone. Fired. Out of here. Ain't nothing I can do for you.